Welcome to the Porecast. I'm your host, Carly Harmson. As a licensed master esthetician with nearly 2 decades of experience, I feel confident to meet you here every week to educate about the latest trends and must-have products, as well as to decode the science and demystify the overwhelming world of skincare. Whether you're a wide-eyed, curious beginner or you're a veteran skincare pro, this is the podcast for you. So grab your favorite face mask and discover with me someone who's not only a skincare guru, but also a card-carrying member of Skincare Obsessed, just like you. Get ready for this episode of the podcast, starting now. Hi, and welcome back. I've had some great feedback on the podcast so far, and I am just so grateful you are here and continue to join me each and every week. If you aren't already following me over on my Instagram handle is at the real Besthetician. That's Besthetician. And this week, I am kicking off a March Madness Skincare Edition voting event over on my IG stories. So please head over there, get ready to make your vote count on Friday when we start with our first 32 products, which were gathered over the last month or so from my community over there, who, by the way, is mostly licensed estheticians. We've got a variety of brands, products, and price points, and we will be voting every single Friday until we get to our top number one ultimate holy grail product on April 10th. So come join me over there and let me know your votes. On to the show. If I told you there was one treatment that could significantly reduce signs of aging, strengthen the skin, reduce acne breakouts, smooth skin texture, increase collagen production, and more, what treatment do you think I'm talking about? If you said retinol, you're right. You're retinol right. Today we are going to talk about retinol, and this will be part one of a 2-part episode because retinol is that girl. We really need more time to give this powerhouse ingredient all that it deserves. You've most likely heard of retinol before, and maybe even already have it incorporated into your routine. Or maybe you're a skin pro listening today and you might be slinging retinol products to your clients because it's just that good. But like in many things in life, too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. I know that sounds really foreboding, but one thing you can count on here at the podcast is that I'm committed to bring you the truth and give it to you straight. So let's get into it. Retinol is a form of vitamin A, which is a fat-soluble vitamin found in animal sources, but it's found in other forms too, like plants. Vitamin A is critical for certain functions and features of the body, like vision, skin cell growth, and immune function. A deficiency in our diet has been linked to extreme dry and scaly skin, even eczema. Other symptoms of a deficiency can include poor wound healing, chapped lips, and if you've ever seen the little cracks in the corners of the mouth, you guessed it, that is a deficiency in vitamin A. Now, it's expected that we get vitamin A from our food sources, so supplementation is generally not recommended because it is a fat-soluble vitamin that will store excess in the liver as retinol esters rather than flushing it out of the body like a water-soluble vitamin, say like vitamin C. But getting a diet rich in beta carotene, which is known as a vitamin A precursor, is a good idea, and we can get these mostly from fruits and vegetables. In fact, in those fruits and vegetables, any of them that have that yellow pigment or color to it, that's beta carotene. I'm not one to shy away from getting vitamin A into the diet by the best sources, which are liver. I know. But let me tell you, I've consumed a lot worse in my 40 years than a beef liver capsule. I did drink jungle juice in my 20s. Vitamin A derivatives in skincare is also a yellow colored powder or liquid, and it may be sourced naturally or synthetically. It can be found in many forms in both over-the-counter, which for the purpose of this conversation would mean anything you can get at drugstore, department store, from your esthetician, but it is also available in prescription strength by a medical professional. Most commonly, these ingredients are featured in treatment creams or gels. Some of these ingredients marketed in these formulas include retinol, retinoic acid, retinaldehyde, retinol palmitate, retinol acetate, and beta carotene, to name just a few. We will discuss each of these in more depth in part 2 of this two-part next week, so look forward to that. Vitamin A derivatives like retinol have an interesting history, dating back to the early 1900s with the discovery of vitamin A. But because of its volatility and instability, it took decades to stabilize and to get into a usable formula. In the mid century, 1900s, retinoic acid, which is known as the pure form of vitamin A, was discovered and published as a treatment for acne. So while retinol is highly regarded as the gold standard of anti aging or aging skincare, it actually had a humbler beginning as an acne treatment, which I should remind you was not as massive of a skin issue in 1950 as it seems to be today, but rather just accepted and thought of as a rite of passage as young kids went through puberty. Later in the 1980s, retinoic acid was looked at as a possible anti aging or age corrective treatment and became as mainstream in the 90s as Nirvana's Smells Like Teen Spirit. Listen, y'all, 90s brought it. Trends like Doc Martens, scrunchies, cool brown lipstick, and retinol. All the things you crazy kids are embracing now, my generation brought. So I will personally accept your thank you with a hearty, you're welcome. So, how does retinol and its vitamin A peers work? Oh, and before I get into that, a very informed and educated hot take: retinol does not thin the skin. I repeat, retinol does not thin the skin. I'll explain myself more in just a minute. Retinol works by speeding up skin cell proliferation. In other words, it speeds up your skin cell renewal cycle. Right at where the top and middle layer of our skin meets is known as the dermal epidermal juncture. And right there at the top in the epidermal layer, we have mama basal cells, that's BASAL, right on top of that juncture. And they are responsible for all epidermal skin cells. Mama cells are dividing through mitosis and are replicating themselves into daughter cells. As more cells are created, the older cells push up to the top. This process is known on average to take 28 days from birth to death of an epidermal cell. So basically, a whole new you every month. Yay. As we age, this process does slow though. I like to think of whatever age you are in years is the number of days it takes to have a complete cell cycle. So, for example, I'm 39 years old. My skin cell cycle probably takes a little longer than the average 28 days that has been thrown around. So I'm going to say 39 days. This is important because this treatment is so effective at skin cell proliferation that as we age, that's when we really need it. So, retinol, which ultimately is converted to retinoic acid in the skin, and we'll talk about this more in part 2, is speeding up that cell division and movement to the surface of the skin, thus having a whole host of benefits to the skin, including improving conditions of aging skin and acne prone skin. But it also does more. It kind of kicks awake our collagen fibroblasts to make more collagen. It improves elasticity by cleaning up degenerated elastin. It promotes our own natural hyaluronic acid. It reduces redness, ultimately by strengthening blood supply to the tissues, and in some forms serves as an antioxidant to prevent damage to the skin that can result in premature aging later. In the case of acne, retinoic acid is shown to help with primary and secondary acne lesions by normaling desquamation, inhibiting the formation of microcomedones due to cell differentiation, and reduces inflammation. In many of my guest lectures, instructor presentations, etc., you'll hear me say that vitamin A are for the two A's, aging and acne. And hell, if you've got both, adult acne, I did, this is the ultimate treatment. Now, and this is important. So if you are multitasking, come back to me. Retinoid therapy is not exfoliation. Retinol does not thin the skin. This is a common misconception because retinol does not play a role in breaking down the bonds that hold skin cells together at the top of the skin. In fact, over time, Retinol actually thickens the upper layers of the skin, making it stronger and fortified. Advanced estheticians and medical providers that are worth their salt, that are providing advanced skin treatments like laser resurfacing or medium to deep depth chemical peels, will require you start a regimen of RET or TRET 1 to 3 months prior to receiving these advanced treatments. Why? Because retinol thickens and strengthens the skin, making it a better, safer outcome of these treatments. Did you know that? So while a lot of people think retinol thins the skin, it actually doesn't. In fact, over time, thickens the skin. Let me see if I can play with an analogy that might make some sense. I've used the idea of a protest before as a skin physiology analogy. In this socially active society, protests are happening every day. So hopefully, this is something we can relate to and understand. Let's say, hypothetically, there's a beautiful historic tree that the city wants to rip down to develop the land. And a community rallies together to protect this tree. They stand together in rows of lines, linking arms. This is known as a stand in or sit in protest. FYI, I have used the same analogy when talking about barrier function before, so to some of you it might sound familiar. Retinoic acid is basically helping to speed up the creation of these new protesters to run up to the back of the formed rows of people and link arms with other new protesters. You see where this is going? Over time, the rows get deeper and deeper, thus strengthening the protest. Or, what I'm trying to say, the skin. The front few rows of protesters start to become fatigued, exhausted, haggard, even, and they're ready to pass the baton. At least this is what is visible to the counter protests or the authorities that are facing those first rows or lines of defense, just like our skin. So, in some cases, to remove those first few rows, we might need to bring in an outside source, like the authorities, to manually break those links, those linked arms that these front rows of protesters have to build strength and protection and pull them away. So we can think of this as an exfoliation step that would thin those upper layers of skin, with the most effective being chemical exfoliators like hydroxy acids and enzymes. Does this make sense? So we can no longer say that retinol thins the skin because it doesn't. It doesn't exfoliate the skin, and we will no longer perpetuate that misinformation. All right, I'm off my soapbox now, but I wanted to make that really clear. In many cases, pairing retinol with chemical exfoliation might be recommended. So I'll talk about that more in part 2 as well. Thanks for bearing with me through that. I wanted to make that very clear. We're all going to be experts on retinol now. So why does retinol cause flaking and peeling of the skin, much like acids can, if there's no exfoliation happening? This effect is not permanently ongoing, only with its initial use. It's a combination of sped up skin cell cycles, yes, but it's that initial dryness that retinoic acid can cause. Retinoic acid, which can also be labeled as a keratolytic, as is salicylic acid and benzoyl peroxide, it has a drying effect on the skin. It can affect tool, transepidermal water loss, and it can impair the barrier function, but usually it's only temporarily until the skin acclimates to the treatment. This is true for both first time users of vitamin A derivatives, but also ongoing users that are changing forms or concentrations of vitamin A derivatives. We will talk about best practices to mitigate any potential side effects in part 2, so look forward to that next week. So, to recap, simply, retinol and its derivatives work by increasing cell turnover or proliferation, which in turn can decongest and unclog pores, increase collagen production to plump skin, reduce blemishes, reduce the appearance of fine lines and wrinkles, reduce appearance of age spots and uneven skin tone, and even jumpstart our own hyaluronic acid for more plump, hydrated skin. So, with all of these amazing benefits, you might be asking yourself, why isn't everyone using this magical skincare product? And the answer is because it's not for everyone. There are specific skin conditions and types this treatment is ideal for. There are also some contraindications that prevent people from using this treatment, even if their skin type or condition makes them a good candidate. Again, the 2A's are acne and aging. These are the ideal candidates for retinoid therapy. With the trends in beauty being largely driven by platforms like TikTok, love it or hate it, people can make fully uninformed content that can go viral and perpetuate misinformation. So it makes me very concerned about the state and health of people's skin. There's a lot of wild stuff happening over there, retinol misuse included. But because retinol is such a highly searched keyword on these platforms, there is mass interest in the treatment. And with it, hundreds of thousands of opinions that are not always rooted in truth. For example, I came across a lifestyle creator on TikTok who made a video advocating not to use retinol because it will condition, according to her, it will condition the body to slow its own natural vitamin A production. She even says it matches its production output to the concentration of retinol that you're using. Excuse me? If you paid attention in middle school health class, which, by the way, I barely did, you'll remember that vitamin A is an essential nutrient, meaning it's essential that we get it in our diets and life because we literally don't make it. Not to mention, nutrients internally are completely utilized differently than topically, but that's another story for another day. It's a completely bonkers take. Another video I came across recently was about retinol causing an acceleration of proliferation, which she didn't use those words. Those are my professional words and lingo. And yes, that's true. But according to her, has a finite role, meaning the skin cells only have so many skin cells they can replicate. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? She's suggesting you will run out of skin cells. Oh my lordy. This is not even a thing. This is completely delulu, if you ask me. And there's thousands of people who liked and saved this video. But don't you fret. That's why I'm here. And that's why you're here. At the end of this, we are going to be like the black belts of retinoid therapy. All right, let's talk about who shouldn't use retinoids. For those not in those two categories, aging skin or acne, retinol is just not necessary, and it may even cause unnecessary damage that can result in signs of aging down the road. There's some interesting dialogue happening now about whether or not vitamin A derivatives like retinol are photosensitizing. Most articles, opinions, papers that you can find online indicate that it does. I think most people believe or accept that it does. But remember, it's not exfoliating, so how does that happen? It is common knowledge that retinol degrades when it's exposed to light, but that still doesn't explain the theory that it does cause photosensitivity. And while there's some studies out there that indicate that retinoic acid may cause photosensitivity, there's just not a lot of clinical evidence to prove so. With that being said, it is recommended to keep the skin protected from UV exposure daily with the use of a broad spectrum sunscreen, whether you use retinol or not. And lack of evidence does not necessarily mean it isn't so. Common therapies include the use of other actives like vitamin C and hydroxy acids, which most definitely require use of a sun protection as they are known photosensitizing agents. Also consider this. Retinol does cause increased inflammation, dryness, and irritation, and it can compromise the barrier initially while acclimating to the treatment. So, could it be hypothesized that the skin in that more vulnerable state may also be more vulnerable to UV exposure? As for me and my house, I will stand by the theory that vitamin A is photosensitizing and treat the skin as such. But hey, babe, you do you. And as always, I might change my mind later if more science emerges. I'm entitled to that, as are you. So, I'd like to talk about that barrier disruption and inflammation associated with initial use of vitamin A derivatives and why you shouldn't take that risk if you don't absolutely need to because you don't have aging skin and you don't have acne prone skin. You know, the tweens using retinol of it all. P.S. If you want my take on Sephora Kids and teen skincare, hop on over to episode 9. I talk about this a lot more. Yes, it's true that retinol and its counterparts have preventative aging qualities, but is it enough to justify tween, teen, or even young adults to use it? Again, if acne is present in these younger skins, it's most likely beneficial and the reward outweighs the risk. But what about the 17-year-old with pretty normal skin? No. No. In my opinion, my humble opinion, That time and money is better spent on actual prevention to support the skin in health and graceful aging down the road. Products like vitamin C, other antioxidants, and sun protection SPF are superior. With putting the skin into a state of inflammation for a period of time, especially chronically, that can increase premature aging down the road. I like to call this inflammaging. Sometimes this side effect of inflammation can be so severe that it is also characterized by severe redness or erythema, irritation, stinging in the skin, heat, even swelling. And this is in addition to that initial flaking and peeling skin that many people experience with the retinoid product. In some cases, retinol burn can happen, which can result in injury, blisters, and for some skin tones, like permanent dark marks. We call this post inflammatory hyperpigmentation, which is a result of trauma to the skin, and it leaves some hyperpigmented clusters of skin cells behind. With normal skins that don't have signs of aging or active acne, I just don't think it's worth it. Generally speaking, late 20s to early 30s is a great time to begin retinols, whether that's with an over-the-counter treatment or a prescription form from a doc. This will be by a case-by-case basis. In addition to tweens, teens, and young adults without acne, who else shouldn't use topical vitamin A? Contraindications of retinoid therapy include pregnancy and nursing. This is based on hypothetical, but it's always best to be safe than sorry. Accutane, also known as isotretinoin, and excessively sensitized skin or compromised barrier. It is critical that you tell your skin or medical professional if you are using retinol or retinoic acid when receiving any skin-related treatment, including facials, chemical peels, laser, even waxing. Your skincare provider will coach you to discontinue the treatment for a certain period of time, depending on the type and concentration that you're using, before, so up to the treatment, and after. Importantly, once you begin, you need to commit to a consistent schedule of use. Start with a lower concentration to ensure tolerability, and pair with other appropriate actives and sun protection. This is the sure path to success on this treatment. You might expect some of these side effects, but in part 2, I will share some of the tips to mitigate side effects so one can get into a consistent routine. And know this, side effects are not indicative of results. In other words, if you don't see side effects, but you see improvement, that's ideal. Just because you're not flaking or peeling doesn't mean a treatment isn't working. Consistency over intensity will always reign supreme. So if that means lower dose, more regularly, with no side effects, that is best. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you learned a few new things about vitamin A derivatives, and I can't wait to meet you back here for part 2 of this episode, releasing next week, where I will cover retinol treatments, including ideal packaging to look for, formulas, concentrations. We will also talk about the pros and cons of each type of vitamin A derivative in both over-the-counter treatments and prescription treatments. We'll also discuss perfect pairings with other actives and best practices for use, again, to help mitigate some of those side effects. So see you next week. Thanks for tuning into this week's episode of the Podcast. If you like this episode, be sure to share it with a bestie or on your socials. And if you love the episode, please leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. Your positive feedback means so much to me. You can connect with me at The Real Besthetician on Instagram or The Besthetician anywhere else. And hey babe, this week's podcast looks like clear with a chance of glow. See you next time.